So I just finished watching The Chosen Season 5, and I realized I missed something. But here's the thing, it wasn't any of those scenes. It was this one. Because you see, that scene, Rhema's death from Season 4, is critical to Season 5. And let me explain. Have you ever wondered why Pontius Pilate decides to execute Jesus? I mean, we know that The Chosen is headed towards this moment, but what doesn't make sense is that, at least according to all of the Gospels, Pilate doesn't want to do it. For almost an entire chapter, he goes back and forth looking for a way not to execute Jesus. So what makes him do it? Why do these religious leaders hold so much power over the most powerful man in Jerusalem? Well, the answer to that question is this man. And when we understand the reason that he kills her, we finally understand everything that's going to happen in Season 5 and the real reason that this man kills Jesus. Okay, let's start here. In order to understand why Quintus murders Rhema, we have to look at where he is. Quintus is the praetor of Capernaum, a decent-sized fishing village along the Sea of Galilee. It sits along the Via Maris, a busy trade route that connects Israel to the rest of the Roman Empire and brings significant trade and travel throughout the towns around the Galilee. And as the praetor, Quintus's primary job is to assimilate his subjects into the Roman Empire. And to really understand what that meant, let's think back all the way to Season 1, Episode 6. Because there's a moment where Matthew says something really interesting as he's speaking to Quintus. He says, conquest is not simply conquering nations, but imposing a way of life. And with that one statement, Matthew lays the foundation for why Quintus will commit murder. And here's why. In my new book, The Forgotten Teachings of Jesus, Rediscovering the Bible with The Chosen Season 1, I talk about how when Rome would win a victory over an opposing nation, not only would they take over the land, but they would gradually begin to acculturate the people they conquered into the Roman way of life. People would be required to worship the emperor, who was promoted as a god. They would install Roman officials who would enforce Roman laws and customs. They would introduce activities and traditions like Roman holidays or sporting events. And ultimately, the people would cease to be Gallic or German or whatever their original nation was, and they would become Romans. The only problem for Quintus is that his subjects are Jewish, and they have no desire to be assimilated. For hundreds of years, they've been conquered by one nation after another after another. And the most recent conqueror, the Seleucids, tried to assimilate them by erasing Judaism altogether. So instead of being surrounded by subjects who are thankful to be a part of the Roman Empire, Quintus is surrounded by rebels. Lots of them. A revolutionary group called the Zealots had strongholds throughout Galilee, and Galilee had a history of rebellion. Just a few decades earlier, around the time that Jesus was born, a city named Sepphoris tried to resist Rome. A man named Judas the Gaulonite captured the citadel and its weapons, and in response, the Roman general Varus destroyed the city and shipped thousands off to be slaves or even crucified. Quintus would have been very familiar with this event. And more importantly, he would have been frequently reminded that if he wanted to keep his post, his primary responsibility was to prevent this. But I know what you might be thinking. What does all of this have to do with Rhema or Jesus? She's not a zealot and neither is he, so why kill them? Well, the thing is, you have to see this from Quintus's perspective. When Jesus shows up, there's suddenly a new religious leader on the scene who's drawing massive crowds, who has a zealot as a disciple, and who is compromising Quintus's own soldiers. For someone like Quintus, he needs to have control. He needs order in his district, and Jesus is a threat to that. Now, this is the moment where we have to pause and say, okay, of course, but all of this is fiction. There is no Quintus in the Bible, there's no Rhema. Why do we care about any of this if it never happened? And the reason is because what Quintus cares about in this show, Pontius Pilate cared about in real life. In The Chosen, Pontius Pilate might seem like a casual, slightly eccentric character with little more than a desire for a good life. But in reality, he was a monster. The real Pontius Pilate ruled over Judea between roughly 26 and 36 AD, and he was despised by the Jewish constituents. He brought the emperor's effigies into Jerusalem, knowing full well that there was a Jewish command against graven images. He tried to bring an aqueduct into the city using temple funds, and towards the end of his career, when a group of Samaritans were on Mount Gerizim searching for what they believed were artifacts belonging to Moses, Pilate suspected them of rebellion. And instead of getting more information, he trapped the Samaritans on Mount Gerizim and slew them by the masses, which ultimately got him sent back to Rome to stand trial before the emperor, never to be heard of again. In other words, Pilate had no problem killing Jews. So why does it seem like he has a problem killing Jesus? Are the gospel writers just putting their own spin on things, or is there something else? Well, let's take a look at what actually happens. According to the Gospels, after Jesus is arrested, he eventually ends up next to a man named Barabbas. And this is where we often get into a bit of Christian fiction, because Barabbas has often been portrayed as a vicious murderer, or a man who is clearly insane. But the reality is actually a lot worse, at least for Pilate. The Bible tells us that Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. And what this means is that Barabbas wasn't just some man who murdered innocent people. He's in prison with men who murdered during an uprising against Rome. Do you see why this would be a problem for Pilate? On one side, he has a man who rode in on a donkey, pretending to be a king, surrounded by people waving palm branches. And on the other, you have Barabbas, a champion of the people, a man fighting to free the Jewish people from Roman occupation. When you think about it, it's no wonder Pilate doesn't want to kill Jesus. Because in the end, the real issue for Pilate isn't really that Jesus is innocent. It's that Barabbas isn't. Barabbas is the obvious threat. And that is what Pilate truly cares about. And this is why this scene from season 3 is so important. I mean, just look at Quintus's face after he kills Rama. He doesn't care that he's killed an innocent Jewish woman, just like Pilate didn't care that he killed innocent Samaritans or innocent Jews in the temple. And Pilate certainly didn't care about killing an innocent Jesus. What both of them care about more than anything else is protecting their power and position at all costs. And I want you to remember this as you watch season 5. There are going to be many moments when Pilate seems to have sympathy for Jesus or defends him in some way. But pay attention for the other moments too. The ones where Pilate's real motives become clear, where his true ambitions stand out. Because if we ever really want to understand what's happening in the Gospels and separate the writing of the show from the words of Scripture, we have to know what we're looking for. And we have to be ready when we see it. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, then you're going to love my new book called The Forgotten Teachings of Jesus, Rediscovering the Bible with The Chosen Season 1. This book is going to show you amazing insights about the world of Jesus that will change the way you see The Chosen and the way you read the Bible. And if you go to www.brandonrobbinsministry.com/book and add your order number, you can also get study questions that are going to help you dive even deeper into the show and the Bible. Thank you so much for watching. And if you'd like to see another video that will help you dive even deeper into episodes of The Chosen and the Bible, just click this link right here.